In a move that I think everybody's going to have an opinion on, NASCAR has suspended Bubba Wallace for his incident with Kyle Larson at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway this past Sunday. And this was reported at around 4 p.m. Central Time or 5 p.m. Eastern Time by everyone. Here is a tweet from Bob Pockrass with the official statement saying that Bubba Wallace has been suspended for the Cup race at Homestead-Miami Speedway for the incident with Kyle Larson. It's a one-race suspension, no fine nor points penalty. Now, I've been very clear on every social media platform that I think Bubba's actions on the track, not the fighting, not what he said in the media, nothing like that, what he did on the track warranted a suspension. And while it didn't fit with precedent that former NASCAR admins like the Brian France era had ruled, well, I think that them setting this new precedent is a good way to go about it. I also agree that with the suspension, there shouldn't be a fine or points penalty. The penalty in and of itself is a team losing its star driver instead of losing points or money for it. And I think that the message will get across in this way. This isn't like something like Ty Gibbs or William Byron did where NASCAR didn't suspend them, but they still needed to get the message across with points and money. So I think that all around this is the most fair possible way to suspend and penalize in general Bubba Wallace. And what I said before is honestly really what I like about this. This sets a new precedent that you cannot right rear hook a driver into the wall. It doesn't matter what the circumstances of it are, you cannot do this. You cannot put drivers at risk, at an unnecessary risk, for this type of revenge. I think if Bubba Wallace had went into turn one and bumped him out of the way or even nudged him into the wall, he'd be fine. He would have been fine. I think if he door slams him, he'd be fine. Heck, William Byron and Ty Gibbs proved while you get penalized points and money, you could even nudge him or hit him under caution or wreck him even, and you wouldn't have lost that race. But this sets a boundary for all drivers. You can't do this. This is the line. NASCAR has finally stepped in and is acting as the adult here instead of just letting boys have at it in some of the worst possible ways. And I know that this is going to upset some people. The people who said that there shouldn't have been a suspension, I think had a lot of merit to it because that was the previous sentiment that NASCAR had put out with different penalties. Heck, even in my earlier video today, I had said as much myself. But there needs to be changes, and NASCAR has seemed to let the drivers get out of their control, and they need to be reined back in. This is a glaring example, and now Bubba Wallace is being made an example of. And I think this will definitely get through to Bubba Wallace. Bubba, as we've seen, has been very, very emotional, both on and off the track, and he lets his emotions sometimes dictate how he acts in response to events around him. This one is going to have to teach him in a very harsh way that veteran drivers who want to compete year in and year out for wins, top fives, top tens, and maybe one day championships, you can't do that. You cannot go out there and put drivers at risk because you're upset in that way. And while this is going to be a bad moment in Bubba's career, he'll overcome this. He'll get past this, and I think that due to both losing his composure and then being put in check, I think it'll make him a better driver over time, and maybe in the long run will help him in some of those really high stakes and high aggression moments where he might need to go for a win or go for a playoff spot, go for the next round of the playoffs when he eventually does make it in as more than just a driver for a team that's in. I think it once again shows that this new administration in NASCAR doesn't show favorites, because when you look at the way that NASCAR has ruled before, you've seen it, for instance, with Jeff Gordon in 2012, where NASCAR won't suspend somebody who is a fan favorite, who moves the needle, and in doing so has shown to be very unfair at times. Because when you look at that Jeff Gordon incident, while 10 years ago, it was a very similar incident to what Bubba Wallace did. Gordon had been nudged by somebody and wanted revenge. Unlike Gordon, Bubba didn't wait up on him, he got him right away, but Gordon would end up taking out a member of the playoffs in Clint Bowyer. Clint Bowyer being a huge championship contender, and really Jeff Gordon got away scot-free. Yeah, he had to pay a fine. Yeah, he had points penalties, but at that point he was out of the championship battle, and at that point he had plenty of money. Two things that Bubba Wallace also has. So this is a really good sign, in my opinion, that NASCAR might finally be getting the police hat back on and saying, you know what, this is it. That we cannot stand doing this any longer. You guys need to act like adults. I like that. And it's something that the Brian France era was seldom to do as well. So maybe separating yourself from that kind of history is the best course of action. And I think what really became the deciding factor in all of this was the aforementioned playoffs. Listen, Christopher Bell was the innocent bystander in all this. Bell was right behind these two drivers. He was trying to avoid the accident, ended up getting collected by it, and ultimately the guy who's been the fastest car during the playoffs so far is now on the verge of being out and will probably have to have another walk-off win in order to make it into the Final Four. Unfortunately for Bubba, Christopher Bell is a Toyota teammate, which is going to make that even more awkward, as you saw in his apology tweet about Toyota Racing possibly losing their shot at a championship because of him. I think if some random driver got taken out and not a championship contender, Bubba would probably be getting a 50-point fine, and the team, 2311, would be getting a 50 owner point fine, and Bubba would probably also be out $100,000, but he wouldn't be missing the next race. I think that main factor that got him the penalty was that he ultimately has changed the course of the playoffs. He took out probably one of the top 3 contenders left, and there's no real making that up. There's no way Christopher Bell is going to go out there unless he gets a win, which is going to be very difficult seeing that the next 2 tracks are good for many drivers. He's not going to be able to make that up without a lot of miracles happening. So NASCAR, I think at this point, has shown you can't mess with the playoffs in any way. The playoffs in a lot of ways are like the next gen car. Do not touch them if you're not involved. If you're not involved in making the car, you can't touch the car. If you're not involved in deciding the playoffs as a playoff driver, play with kid gloves with those playoff guys. And while this is the extreme example, I think you're going to see that a lot as NASCAR is going to double down on a lot of things. So as we've seen, there's a lot of things that go into this. But ultimately, like I said, I think NASCAR made the right call, and I'm genuinely surprised that they made this call on such a popular driver. But this will send shockwaves both in the sport as well as outside. You're going to see a lot of bad actors, both in the sport and outside, try and make it their agenda on it. So just buckle up, NASCAR fans. It's going to be rough going on social media until probably the end of the Homestead race. But with that, I'm going to pass it all on to you. Do you think Bubba Wallace deserved this suspension? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support. And until next time, have a good one.